Good morning and happy Monday to everybody on this beautiful, kind of rainy day. So make sure you drive safe and be careful out there. My name is Kerry Quashin. I am the host of the Action Drug Rehab Hour. I'm here with my co-host, Robbie Robinson. How are you, Robbie? How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you and happy belated New Year.
Exactly, huh?
That's right.
And we got Cara Miller with us, which we're going to bring
Oh,
on in a few
yes.
minutes. She's been on this show once before, and the reason I want to talk about some stuff first, but the reason I brought you on is because before, right in the midst of all this epidemic we had or pandemic we had, we had this huge problem with fentanyl. And everybody was freaking out that everybody was dying. They're putting it in everything. And right now, everybody's dying. They're putting it in everything. And nobody's really talking about it anymore. So I want to start talking about it again because it's freaking insane. And every time I go to my Facebook, somebody's dying. You know, I'm hearing about somebody that's dying. I mean, I was called the other day about the four people who were found dead in Palmdale. And some people I knew worked with one of those guys, and they called me crying. And they said, we were just waiting for something like this to happen. And then the Pawn Star guy's kid, he overdosed. It was all over the news.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So if 111 deaths was the year before last, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Am I correct?
Right.
And that's, they say, accidental overdoses. It's up 8% this year. So it's not going down, it's going up. Even if it went down, it needs to go way down, but it's going up. So it's going into the wrong direction. And what does that mean, Robbie?
Well, that means that, people are not taking this drug serious. This drug is serious. It's like being put on a scaffolding waiting to be hung. And all a person has to do is either let you drop down or kick you off the chair. And the consequences for people selling these drugs, there's hardly anything. The sheriffs will stop people on the freeway with tons of methamphetamine and laced with fentanyl. Person gets a ticket and they tell him to show up in court.
Now, how do you know all this?
Well, because I work at the sheriff's department, I'm an intervention specialist.
So what you're saying is truth.
Oh yeah, and the sheriffs in Santa Clarita are doing a fabulous job.
Yes, they are.
But the support at the other level is waning. The sheriffs do a great job with trying to just maintain and fight crime. But then after that, they do such a great job. But when it gets time for people who are selling the drugs to get time, then they give them a ticket and then they tell them to come back in court. And let's be real. Do you think these people are really coming back to court? No. They're running away and there's big bench warrants. Last week, I had a kid that was caught for selling drugs. He was juvenile and he turned to 18. The mother was going back and forth with me. I said, your son didn't go to court. And now that they caught him, he's an adult. He's going to go to county jail, and he has to pay the consequence. And the thing that I always say before I finish is if there's no responsibility, there's no accountability, equals no consequences.
Equals what?
No consequences.
Equals a prescription for disaster.
That's right.
You know, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There's no consequences to anything right now.
No.
I know 2 stores up here in Santa Clarita that keeps getting broken into. One was a restaurant that I go to often. She just sold it. She said, it's number 5 times. I'm not doing this anymore. And then another one is some friends of mine that owned a jewelry store. They closed. They couldn't handle it anymore. And it's because they said, look, we can't leave our jewelry outside because if somebody steals it, we can't even go after them. We get in trouble. So the consequences are for now. I was watching the news and they're saying that even porch bandits have the right to privacy. So I mean, it's going the wrong way, is what I'm saying. But let's go back to fentanyl. Where I want to go. So if you look at the numbers, they're so deceiving.
Oh yeah.
Because they say over 100,000 fentanyl deaths or accidental overdoses. And let's pick that apart for a second. I know a lot of people that lost people to drug overdoses. And on most of the death certificates, it says possible drug usage. So that's not a confirmed overdose. So the ones that we're listening to now that we're hearing 111,000 or whatever the number is, real number is, that doesn't include those because they're possible. And almost everyone I know that lost somebody, it says that. So what's the real number? Is it 111? Is it 211? Maybe it's 3 or 411.
I believe that.
I believe that too. So the numbers we're getting aren't real. Now I believe let me get this straight. We live in Santa Clarita and we get the numbers. They're pretty good here. But in general, we don't know what the real number of accidental overdoses is. And what I do know is that most people that are dying from drug overdoses, they're dying from fentanyl, but they're
Yes.
not buying fentanyl.
Yes.
They're buying Oxy and Percocet
Yes.
and crystal meth
Yes.
and cocaine,
Yes.
and they're overdosing from fentanyl. You know that I've detoxed people that comes into my rehab for fentanyl, and they never use it. They use crystal meth.
Yeah.
So they're putting everything. I mean, they're putting it in everything right now. So I mean, I want to give some props. I mean, I know the federal government is trying to do stuff right now, and if they get involved, they're going to try to give people. They're going to get a lot of years for murder. And I know some other cities are. I know some, what's it called? San Bernardino's doing stuff right now. I think our biggest problem is right here in L.A.
Oh, yeah.
And we know why. I'm not going. I don't want to get political.
No, we
right now.
don't.
But we got some issues on top. You know, and no one knows the effect of losing somebody better than people that have lost somebody.
That's right.
You know, I talk to people every day, and one thing I cannot say to these people is I know how you feel.
Right.
Because I don't. I never lost anyone to fentanyl.
I lost a brother to drugs. I lost him to drugs. He was a gangster. I grew up in D.C. I was fortunate, and I chose another way of life. But he was a straight gangster, and it caught up with him, and I lost him. I was there when he took his last breath in hospice in Baltimore, Maryland. I left California and went back. His words to me, man, I wish I had really listened to you. And I didn't want to say I told you. I just kept saying, you're going to come out of this. This is before he really got into hospice. The people who have the answers do not have the power.
All right.
The people who have the answers are not in power. The people like you in the community, you know what's going on. You're dealing with it. People who have lost husbands, wives, and stuff. You have the answers because you went with it. Not all politicians, not all, but some politicians have no clue. They have no clue. And I'm not being political. Some do understand, some don't. But it's about money. Where are we going to put funds to help people who are in need? There's a difference between a person who uses drugs and a person who sells drugs. Let's get real about it. So the person who is using drugs, they need help. And we know that can grow and continue on, and they get into criminality and all that. But the person who are selling drugs, they're profiting on death.
They're making profit off of other people's weaknesses, Robbie.
That's true. And so the people like us, you, me, Carrie, all of us here, Carl, we know we have answers, but we don't have the money.
And the scary thing is I own rehabs. You know that. I've been running rehabs for 40 plus years. And I've been clean and sober 43 years. I'm going to start lying about my recovery. And I'll say 13. You know, you all lie about your age. I'm going to lie about my sobriety because it makes me sound a little bit younger. 13 years clean. Doesn't that sound good? 43. Oh, no. My wife said, right now, Jessica, I'm sure she's listening and laughing right now. So, and she's sick, so I hope you feel better, honey. But going back to where I was, I mean,
that's a good number to be proud of. Though.
Yeah,
that's
know.
One that you don't want to flub. I think.
But you know what? People don't come to rehab to get sober.
That's right.
That's where I'm going. They come to rehab to get rid of a problem. If it's their wife, if it's their boss, if it's their court, if it's their kids, or whatever it is, and they know that they have, okay, I use fentanyl. That doesn't mean I can't drink weed or alcohol, or I can't smoke weed. And that's the problem that we have to tell people. If you have an addictive personality, you quit everything, life's good. If you quit one thing, you're either going to have a problem with what you're using or go back to what you love. And that's the hardest part about treating somebody in recovery. They want to hold on to something. Now, I've been clean and sober for a long time. I won't even say how long anymore. But when I first got clean, I was telling somebody, maybe I could smoke weed. And the guy said, I thought you hate weed. I went, I do. Why would I want to smoke that? But it's just our thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
treating people in treatment, there's a whole lot of things we got to do. We got to try to explain to them it's an all and none thing.
That's right.
If everything's gone, you won't have those issues.
That's
If
right.
you hold on to I can do this, you're going to have the issues, and it's just the way it is. So, if anyone listening, I promise you, if you quit drinking and using, I promise you a better life. If you don't, I promise you the same or worse. It's just that simple. The same or worse. And today, I almost promise, if you're using drugs today, man, and you're buying them on the street, you're going to die.
And
It's
the
not if, it's
conversation-
when.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when. You
And
you have that rope around your neck.
I know. And you know what? I know we're live, and I got live on video right now. And Robbie, they don't see you, but they see me. Sorry, Robbie. But they do if they're on KHTS's website, and which is okay because I'm going to bring Cara on right now. Which Cara's over here. There's Robbie. Hey, Robbie! But Cara's
Give her the
sitting next to
spotlight.
me. And
Give her the
Cara Miller,
spotlight.
come closer to me. You've been on this show before.
Yes, I have.
And the reason I brought you, well, you know what? I'm not going to get into that. You tell your story. How was that?
So we were married for 4 years and then we got a divorce. We're in the process of getting a divorce. You know how that goes. He was very heavily addicted to alcohol, and it got really bad. And then he got really angry, and then he started using drugs. And mostly because he had a back injury that he was in pain all the time. He needed something to get rid of that pain. And you know how that is.
Yeah, drugs, let's get it straight for a minute. There are drugs out there, prescriptions for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you're in pain and you need them. And doctors out there, most doctors, I believe, are good. We have some doctors that are quacks and just give too much.
Yeah.
We know that. But doctors can't see pain. So if somebody goes in there and says, I'm hurting, nowadays there's a care program on the internet so they could tell what's going on if somebody's got a real problem or not. But in those days, they didn't.
Yeah.
So all they could do is listen to the person that's in pain.
Yeah.
So, and doctors also need to be educated. They need to educate people taking them. Painkillers are great if you're in pain for a short period of time. And then you become addicted to them. And when you stop taking them, you feel pain, which it tricks your brain to think you still have that pain that you originally did. And let's get it straight. Some people need to be on pain meds forever. I get that. But most don't.
Yeah. Well, with Aaron, he was really addicted to these pain meds. And when he would run out, he would go to the doctor and they would not give him the pain meds because he wanted them all the time. And then eventually was blacklisted at the hospital.
Henry Mayo.
Yes.
Yeah, they're good at that.
I know they are.
Just so everybody understands, there's now a program called the CARES program,
Yeah.
And what the CARES program is, if Cara goes to the doctor and says, I want a prescription, they have to type her name in now in a computer, and they will a national database where will tell them every prescription they got. So they know, you were at the doctor 2 weeks ago, you got 90 pills, you're not getting any today.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, the doctors are being watched by the DEA. So even doctors that I know that don't write any, they're perfectly legitimate. DEA still calls them up and has meetings with them about what they write. So it's really tightened up, which is some of the reason we're in a crisis right now. Well, I'll let you get into that.
And so because he was blacklisted, he would use me to get the meds. So
what does that mean?
I would have to tell the doctor I was in pain in order to get pain meds to give to him. I was vulnerable. I didn't want to see him in pain, so I did it.
Right. And you thought he needed it.
And I thought he needed it. And then eventually, this is one of the reasons why our marriage failed was because I couldn't do it anymore. My kids were seeing this. I couldn't do it. And eventually
It's an ugly thing to see, isn't
it's
it?
a very ugly thing. And
Talk about the ugliness of living with somebody using drugs that are addicted.
so when he wasn't on his meds, he would get very, very angry to the point to where he was just fighting with me for no reason. We would be in the car and we'd just be arguing, and he'd be hitting the door and the window and say, I need something for this pain. And it's like, at that point, I'm just crying while I'm driving.
And the kids are watching.
The kids are watching. They remember all the fights. They remember it.
I'm sure.
My daughter brings
How many
it up
kids?
all
How
the time.
many?
I have 2 kids.
2 kids.
My daughter brings it up and says, "Do you remember the time when you and Daddy did this?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, how do you remember that? You were 3."
You know what?
It's crazy.
No, I'm telling you, if I want to know what's going on in somebody's house, and I ask the young kids, they always remember. And this is a message to anyone listening right now that might be using or thinking about using or is enabling somebody. Be the person you want your kid to grow up and be.
Mm-hmm.
Be the person you want your kid to grow up and be. Don't do the things you don't want your kid to do because they learn what to do that way.
Exactly.
Make sacrifices, man. If you're old enough to or mature enough to have a child, be the role model. Go ahead.
So, Aaron and I got separated, and then he became homeless because his parents no longer wanted him at the house because he was using all the time. So he was in and out of hospitals, mental hospitals, and stuff like that.
So they do say when somebody's using drugs, they're addicted to the drug, and the whole family is addicted to the person, and it affects everyone that loves them.
Exactly. And then he would always call me and say, "I need money, I need this, I need that," and I'd be vulnerable to do it because he would use the "I'm the father of your children" card. And that would be like the hit me in the heart type of deal, because it's like you don't want to see the father of your children suffering.
You don't want to see anyone
You don't
suffering.
want to see that. So there would be weekly visits with him to the hotel, and then he would be fine. He would be sober for a couple months, and then he'd, go right back into it because the place that he was going to didn't have room for him there. They were like, "Oh, you got to wait a couple weeks for somebody to call you because we're booked."
Rehabs you're
we're
talking
waiting
about?
list.
Yeah.
There's a waiting list.
When somebody wants to go to rehab,
Yeah.
you got a window, and it's a real short window. Because if they wake up and decide I want treatment, and you can't find a bed, what do? They go out and use because they have no choice. They get dope sick if they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So you lose that window.
Yeah. So he was sober for a good 3 months. He was in a hospital, and then he went back to the hotel because he was waiting for a bed, and they said it would be like a couple days. And literally, I remember the very last day with me and him, we were laughing, and he was apologizing for all the things that he did to me in life, and that how using really affected him and the kids and everything. And we had a government appointment the next day, and I remember him not calling me, and I was texting him, and he would not answer his phone, and I said something's wrong.
I don't want to go there yet because we're going to go on a break in a minute.
Okay.
But I do want to ask you, how was it that he was clean for 3 months? How did that feel?
It felt great, and he was a totally different person, and he felt amazing. And I remember he used to like getting pedicures. So we would go to the spa.
I would never do that. Well, maybe once or twice.
And then he'd look at me and he said, "This is so much better than using."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "It is, isn't it? Feels good.
Great. That's great.
Isn't it?"
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to go on break in a minute. But a good thing turned tragic, didn't it?
Yes.
And when we come back from break, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So thanks, Carl. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. The story gets pretty insane.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Action Drug Rehab Hour. I'm Kerry Quashin along here with Robbie Robinson, my co-host, and we're talking to Cara Miller. And before, if you're just joining us, before that we were talking about fentanyl and overdoses, and Cara was telling us a story. And where we left off is that she was in the midst of a divorce because her husband, the drugs just took over, and it became a nightmare. A love story turned not so love.
Yeah.
It's turned pretty bad, and he was being clean for 3 months, and you had a great day. And next day, what happened?
So we had a government appointment, and he was supposed to go with me, and I couldn't get a hold of him all day, and he'd always answer his phone. There'd be times where he'd call me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, she's calling me," and I
Yeah, you're dreaded, don't
yeah,
you?
exactly. I was like, really? So the fact that he didn't answer and he didn't return my calls, I was like, something's going on. It's not right. So I come home and I tell my family, I said, I think I need to go and see how Aaron is.
Let's move this down.
And so,
Didn't work. I wanted them to be able to see Cara. I'm sorry,
yeah,
we're
it's
on
okay.
live and she can't be seen.
Okay. And so we all get in the car and we go to the hotel where he was staying at. And I knock on the door.
That must have been a terrible drive because you knew something
I knew
was wrong.
something
Your
was
gut
wrong
was
because
there.
my gut. Yeah. So I knock on the door, and then this guy answers the door I've never seen before, and I'm like, "Is Aaron here?" And he's like, "I don't know who that is." And I'm like, "Am I at the right hotel room?"
Yeah.
Like, so I look and I said, "No, this is the number he's at." So I go back, and I knock on the door, and the guy answers again, and I said, "No, I know Aaron's in here." And he's like, "I don't know who that is." Like, he was so strung out. And then I see Aaron on the bed, face down.
Face down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, crap. I couldn't even walk in because I just knew.
Yeah.
So I ran off screaming like there's no day tomorrow. And then my dad comes out of the car. My kids are crying. My mom's crying. And my dad's like, what's going on? And I tell him, Aaron's not moving. He's up there. And so my dad goes in and he feels him and he said, yeah, he's cold to the touch. And I said, oh my gosh, this is like a nightmare.
He was dead.
Yes. So I have the receptionist call 911 because I couldn't do it. And I just remember
You probably were pretty hysterical.
I was very hysterical, and the guy that was in the hotel room just fled. He was like gone.
He booked it, huh?
Yeah, and I was like, what is this? Like, what's happening? And then so the cops come and they investigate the room, and then they ask me, they said, did Aaron use? And I said, yeah, but he was clean for 3 months. And they said, well, there's a lot of drugs in there. And I said, oh gosh.
It was like from a horror flick. Wasn't that what was in that room?
Heroin, mostly, they saw, which Aaron never used heroin. So I knew, yeah. And then they also said fentanyl was in there.
Of course.
Yep.
It was rough, huh?
It was very rough.
You had your kids in the car.
I had
your
my kids
dad
in the
was with
car.
you.
Yeah. And I just remember the detective explaining to me that the fentanyl was laced with painkillers because there were painkillers in there, but they saw
So actually the painkillers were laced with fentanyl.
Yes,
Yeah.
because...
Which is about 99% of what's going on if you buy anything on the streets today. You're not buying pain meds. You're buying fentanyl pills.
Yes. So I later found that out through the detective, and he said it was like M36s, I think, which is a
M30s. Right.
M30s, yeah, it was a painkiller, and they said it had fentanyl in it, and I knew something was wrong because my ex's best friend told me, he said Aaron had texted him at 4 a.m. and said, something is wrong, call me in the morning.
Oh, boy.
So Aaron, I feel like Aaron knew something was happening to him. So.
And even worse, he was clean for 3 months.
Yeah.
So his tolerance was down. You know that a lot of these overdoses are people that has been clean for a while, decides to use one more time, and their body cannot handle what their mind wants. They want to get that little feeling, and their body just says, no, goodbye.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. So it was very devastating, and honestly, to this day, I'm just besides myself.
How long ago did this happen?
About 2.5 years ago now.
Okay.
I think the hardest part is seeing my kids,
Of course.
and my son especially, asking questions and missing his dad, because he's now feeling like his dad is gone, and he's talking about, he's crying all
How
the
old is he?
time. He just turned 8 yesterday,
Yes,
so
And he remembers that day, doesn't he?
he does. He does remember the day, and it didn't really hit him that he was gone until the funeral, I think, that we had for Aaron, and especially now that he's older and he sees he's absent. He wants everything daddy, oh, this reminds me of daddy, I
He misses his dad,
he
huh?
misses his dad a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your daughter was trying to help, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
How old is your daughter?
She'll be 10 in April, so she's 9. So she misses him a lot too, because when there's father-daughter dance at
Yeah.
school, she asks grandpa to take her because she doesn't have dad to take her. And there's kids at school that always talk about her dad and said, well, your dad's dead because of you. And these kids are horrible.
Yeah. In the midst of all this, didn't she want to come up and help? I mean, I remember you saying that somebody wanted to go up, one of your
Yeah,
children.
my daughter wanted to, when the day after we had to clean Aaron's room out, and the hotel room, I had to gather his stuff, which was the hardest day of my life. It was like a murder scene. There was blood all on the sheets.
You vomit, and when you're overdosing like that, you can't breathe, so you're throwing up and everything's coming out.
Yeah, so I just remember picking up his things and just crying, and I said, I cannot believe this, and I felt just, I really couldn't feel anything at this time. I was just really devastated, but yeah, I wouldn't let my daughter in the room. I said, no, you stay with
Can
me.
you guys imagine out there? I want you all to think for a second that's listening or watching. Can you imagine walking in on someone you love, finding them dead like that? Think about it for a second. So if you have somebody that you love that is using drugs, step in between them somehow. If you're somebody that's using, look at how it affects people, not just you. When that thinking of it doesn't affect anyone but me is not true. It affects everyone who loves you.
Well, and I was just thinking about that, Cara. You're talking about how it's affected your children naturally. It's affected you, obviously. And have you had a chance to kind of work through it and talk to people? Obviously, you have Carrie and Robbie, people like that who are there for you. But have you really had a chance to kind of, I don't know what the proper word is, just to work through it on your own? You're trying to help your own kids at the same time, yet you still need someone to kind of hold your hand too. And I hope that you've had that for yourself, for your own mental state.
Honestly, I haven't. I've just been keeping everything inside. I'm the type of person that just doesn't, and Aaron used to say this all the time. He said, you got to talk to people. And I said, I can't. I'm that type of person that just wants to deal with it on my own. And then I always hear his voice saying, you got to talk to somebody about this. And I'm like, okay, I should go and just go with a grief counselor and stuff like that. But
Which I'm going to hook you up with.
okay.
And there's a friend of mine that's a grief
Okay.
recovery. She's really, really a good person.
Okay.
And she can help lots.
Yeah.
But but you do talk about it. It's not something that you hide.
Right.
You're open about it. We did a documentary I did with you did with me with Austin Dave, and if he ever puts it out.
I know, I'm waiting for that.
But it's done. I know that.
Yeah.
So we'll push him a little bit.
Okay.
But in the meantime, you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
You really are. It's not like you're sitting in a corner not talking about it.
Yeah.
Are you connected? Are you connected with church?
I am. I actually go to the same church you go to, Higher
Well,
Vision.
that's
so,
right. Well,
yeah.
they have grief counseling there.
Yeah, I know
and they have
do.
circles.
Yeah, I have yet to join.
Well, when you see me, when you see me next Sunday, just come up to me.
Okay.
And then I'll find out. We can find out right there. Matter of fact, I'll put a note in to pastor's assistant for who the grief counselor is. I'll do that. I'll make a note to myself and I'll email them now.
Okay.
I'll text her right now.
Sounds good.
So how are you dealing? How are you doing? How are you holding up?
Honestly, honestly,
Where's everything with this? I call it murder, but
yeah, I do too. And honestly, I'm angry because
how could you not? I'm sorry. How can you not call it murder when somebody
yeah,
buys, let's say, even heroin,
yeah,
and it's not heroin, it's fentanyl, or they buy an M30 Percocet
yeah,
or an OxyContin, and they say, and it's not that. That's
yeah.
murder. I'm
It is
sorry.
murder, and the fact that the person that gave it to him clearly is not nowhere to be found. They don't know where this person is.
But they are investigating, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, they are still investigating it. I know that they did get the drug dealer.
They did.
Yes, a friend of mine actually worked for the FBI. He's actually investigating the case on his own,
Good.
and he got the drug dealer. 25 years, I think, or 30 years.
He's getting 30 years in
Yes,
prison. So they
yes.
did get him,
They
and
got the drug dealer.
see if the feds get involved,
Yeah,
it becomes murder.
it does.
So if the state does it, it's not. We don't. I don't want to go there.
Yeah,
But the feds are now starting to investigate. So that's really good. So somebody
Yeah.
is paying the price for this, for your husband's death.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but a little.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I'm doing okay. I'm just, I'm actually going to school to become a clinical psychologist
That's great.
to help people with mental health. I actually changed my major because of everything that's happened. I was going to be a school psychologist, but then I was like, I'm going to deal with other people. So,
Gotcha.
yeah,
How's your kids doing?
as best as they can.
Do you guys talk about it?
We actually were talking about it yesterday, and I remind them of the story because I want them to be aware that there are bad people out there and not to trust everyone, Even your friends can be horrible people. So be careful who you trust because
And
you just never know.
don't eat any. I mean, you got to.
Yeah,
You tell them. I mean, because
I did.
we have to talk to our kids when they're young about everything. I mean, you don't want them taking any candy from other kids at school. You don't want them eating brownies or cookies because you never know what's in them. Every day in the ER, they're bringing kids in that took somebody's gummy bears, one of their brothers or sisters or uncles or dads or moms, and they're all messed up on that high-powered THC. And so you have to be super careful when we have children today and let them know what's going on out there and what not to do.
Yeah,
I know you are
exactly.
very good at that.
Yeah. I remind them every day to be careful and not take anything that's not theirs and stuff like that. So
what do you have to say to people listening? We got people listening right now, and I'm sure they're feeling the pain you're feeling. But what do you have to say if they're living with somebody that's doing the same thing that your husband did?
I would say just get them help as soon as possible because if you wait, like I mean, I tried so hard to get him into hospitals and stuff, but like I said, there's a waiting list for all these things. Try to just be there for that person as much as possible. Monitor what they do. I know you can't be there 24/7, but just talk to them and remind them, hey, if you don't stop, this is where you're going to be.
Yeah. And how about the person out there that is using? What do you want to say to them and they have a family?
Or think about your family. Every time you use, think about who you're going to destroy if you are no longer here. Because you may think that your family doesn't care about you or there's people that don't care about you, but there are. And think about those people will have to live with the rest of their life, will have to live with your presence will no longer be here. So they have to live with that.
You know what's really sad? There's so many of these stories right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There's so many. If you just look at the fake numbers, over 100,000 people lost their lives to this same thing your husband did.
Yeah.
So we know at minimum 100,000 people, probably triple or quadruple that number. You get better off, but have to deal with the same thing you're dealing with, where they woke up in the morning and found their husband, son, daughter, wife dead in bed.
That's right.
One of my great friends, Jaime Porta, which is very, very, he's an activist right now, but 16-year-old son, he found him, brain dead in his room.
I think
How do you freaking deal with that?
Well, and I think for me, like sitting here and listening to your story, Cara, I think it's interesting because it's not really on someone's mind necessarily, day to day. And if I were to walk past you at the grocery store, it wouldn't even cross my mind that that's what you were experiencing, that that's what you had to go through and are still dealing with. And I think it's a good reminder, at least I kind of feel a little bit like brought to center a little bit, to be mindful of what people are going through. It's you tell your kids, you don't know what people are experiencing, don't judge a book by its cover, that kind of thing. So it really kind of, it drives it home when I'm sitting here listening to you. And I think I would never have, you could have paid me $1 million and said, guess her story. And I would not have gone down this road.
You know how many people died in the hour we've been here right now from the same thing? You know how many families found their dead children or husbands or wives in this hour in our country? I could tell you at least a half a dozen in this 1 hour. That's a minimum.
It's terrible.
That walked in on something like that. 1 out of every 6 Americans will have a drug or alcohol problem in this country, period. And very, very, very small number of those people will actually get help. And today, you're playing Russian roulette every time you use anything. I'm going to tell you again, there are no such thing as real drugs. If you're buying a Percocet or an Oxy or something online today, it's not real. It's fake.
Yeah.
And these are not chemists that are putting this together or doctors.
They're criminals.
They're criminals.
Real
exactly.
quick,
They're
I had
criminals.
a friend who bought something off the black market and he overdosed the next day. So and he was only 19.
Yeah.
So quick reminder
No,
not to buy
no,
anything.
Nobody's immune. Look at the Pawn Star's son. He's been all over the paper. He just died.
Yeah.
From a what? A drug overdose. How about the 4 people in Palmdale last week that they're pretty sure it was overdoses? I mean, come on.
Oh my gosh.
People are dying everywhere. We don't hear about them unless they're celebrities.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But they're dying every day. No, let's go ahead and take a break when we come. We'll be right back. And I know that I'm putting this on my Facebook Live, and it's hard to see everybody, so I apologize, but I want you all to hear this message.
That's all right. Let her have the time.
This is the Action Drug Rehab. We shall be right back. Welcome back to the Action Drug Rehab Hour. I'm Kerry Question. I am your host. Robbie Robinson is with us, and Cara Miller. Cara just told us her story, which is, I mean, what a tragic deal. I want to say this. I believe that all alcohol and drug addiction starts innocently, and in these days turns tragic very, how do I say this, often. Yeah. I don't think anyone grows up and decides they want to be a drug addict or die from an overdose. When we're young, we all have what I call contracts. Contracts meaning when I grow up, I want to be a newspaper, whatever. I want to be a radio host. I want to be a counselor. I want to be a cop. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a fighter, a model, whatever it is. Nobody says I want to grow up and be a drug addict. And how that happens by us breaking contracts. Because we have another set of contracts when we're little. I believe everyone has them. When I grow up, I'll never. Remember those?
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever smoke a cigarette because my grandpa died, or somebody I know had cancer. I won't use drugs. I said that I'm not going to use drugs because my dad was an addict and an alcoholic, and I never knew if he was going to be alive or not. Mm-hmm. And he died at 47 from it. Last thing he said to me is he was proud of me for being sober at a year and 6 days, and he wished he could have gotten sober with me, and then he died. But no one wants to do that. So what happens? We break contracts. What does that mean? Why would a kid smoke a cigarette? There's only 2 reasons. 1, he wants to be cool with those guys over there, or 2, it's a learned behavior from home. Mm-hmm. So that do what I say, not what I do, don't work. If you want your kids not to do something, don't do it.
Yeah.
Be the role model, be the example. So what happens? They go hang out with these guys that are cool, and somebody says, you want a hit? Now it's a vape.
Yeah.
Most kids say no, but they're there every day, and they're getting desensitized. You sure you don't want a hit? Oh, give me a hit. What did they just do? They broke a contract they made when they were probably in kindergarten, because they're teaching kids in kindergarten nicotine kills. Yeah. So how do they clean that up? It's only tobacco or nicotine. I'll never use weed. What do you mean you won't use weed? It's natural. God put it there. When they legalized pot, they didn't realize that they're legalizing THC too, which is in everything these days. I mean, the candies, the cookies, that's 100% THC. That's not weed. That's causing people to be literally go psychotic and end up in hospitals. I'm putting them in hospital. I put more people in hospital psych wards for THC in the last year than I have in 40 because of this potency that they're using. But anyways, and they smoke weed, and how do they clean that up? It's only pot. I'll never. And the I never today will kill you because every drug out there is Russian roulette. So kids are getting cheated, man. I'm telling you, every day people, well, people experiment with drugs. Experiment with the wrong drug today and you die. There's no such thing as a safe way to experiment. And somebody said, my kid used recreationally. Yeah, what does that mean? He shoots pool and shoots heroin? What's recreationally used? Come on, man. And there is no drugs out there today. Tell me one drug that's not addictive. It's not like it used to be. Every drug's addictive. Use any drug for a period of time and your body gets addicted to it. It needs it. It craves it. It has to have it or you get dope sick.
There's various types of addiction too that comes from drugs. There is sex addiction, attention addiction,
Gambling,
social media addiction, shopping addiction, gambling addiction, and even with social media, I can say what I want, I can talk about what I want, and there are no consequences. But here's the thing with that. When you get out there on social media and you're doing all these things, everybody's listening. Everybody has an opinion, but nobody really wants to help.
Right. Now, we have 1 minute, Cara. What do you want to say?
Honestly, just this drug is just really powerful.
Yes.
And I had no idea how powerful it was until it killed my husband. So I just think, you know, I used to think heroin was the worst drug ever. But now I think fentanyl is the worst drug ever because one little tiny piece of it will kill you.
Yes, it will.
If they put just a little tiny bit too much, then you have what you just saw happen in Palmdale, what they call mass overdoses, meaning 3 or more at the same place.
Yeah.
And that's happening all over the country right now. Sadly, we only hear about it when it's a celebrity, really. And we heard about the Palmdale because it's local to us. But I don't think it made national news.
And it should have. It
And
really
it should have.
have.
On that note, guys, I want to thank Cara. You're a wonderful person. I really have a lot of respect for you, and I know your kids are going to be fine. They have a great mom.
Aww.
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
And thanks for all you do, and thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for listening. Till next week, this is the Action Drug Rehab Hour.